My roommate has been sleepwalking into my room every night, and I just checked the security camera to see what she does. The first night I woke up and Priya was standing at the foot of my bed and I said her name and she walked back out. The second night she came in and stood by the window. Third night by the desk. I started closing my door and she opened it. Not forcefully, just turned the handle and came in and stood somewhere and went back out. Always within a few minutes. Always completely silent. I asked her about it in the morning. She had no memory. She was embarrassed in the way of someone told they do something they cannot control. By the end of the first week I had a security camera pointed at the room from the shelf. I did not check it for 7 days. Not because I forgot, because I kept opening the app and closing it without watching. I was afraid of finding something that required me to do something. Then on a Tuesday at 3 in the morning, I opened the app and went through the footage. Priya came in at 2:15 most nights. The footage was in night vision. Everything gray, green, and secret. She opened the door the same way every time, turned the handle, walked to the center of the room, and then she did the thing I had not predicted. She sat on the floor, cross-legged, in the middle of my floor in the dark, and she sat there for 11 minutes on average, sometimes 12, once for 18, just sitting. Eyes open, but I knew she was not seeing anything. She was asleep and sitting on my floor, and she did it every single night. I watched 7 nights back to back. Same thing every night. Door, floor, 11 minutes, back to bed. On the 4th night, she put both hands flat on the floor and kept them there, like she was feeling for something, or grounding herself. On the 6th night, she spoke. I turned the volume all the way up. She said one sentence in a voice that was not quite her voice, the voice of someone talking from somewhere the waking person doesn't have access to. She said, "I'm still here." Then she went back to bed. I thought about Priya the way I had been thinking about her for 6 months. She was fine, cheerful and competent and organized. She made coffee every morning and left a cup for me. I had not looked past fine because fine didn't ask to be looked past. I thought about the cheerfulness that was consistent in a way that sometimes felt like effort. About the one time in October when she took a moment too long to answer her door, and when she opened it, her face was doing something it immediately stopped doing when she saw me. I thought about a woman who sat on my floor for 11 minutes every night and said, "I'm still here," and went back to bed. I thought about what my room was to her that her room wasn't. I made coffee in the morning. I left a cup on the counter. She came out at 7:30 and said good morning, and I said, "Hey." She said, "Yeah." I said, "I've noticed you seem like you've been carrying something lately." Not as an accusation, just as an observation from someone who had been looking slightly past fine. She wrapped both hands around her mug. Her face did the thing from October. This time she didn't stop it. She said I didn't know it was that obvious. I said it wasn't. I said I just started paying closer attention. She said, "Do you want to talk about it?" She said yes. We sat at the kitchen table and she talked for a long time. She said she moved to this city to start over. She said she picked the apartment because the distance felt like a kind of permission. She said, "I think I've been doing a version of myself that's easy to be around. And I'm good at it. I'm really good at it. But it's so tiring." She said sometimes at night she didn't feel like she existed. She said the version of herself she showed everyone had used up all the material and there was nothing left underneath. Then she said, "I think I've been disappearing a little bit every day and I didn't know where I was going until you asked." No one had asked. The performance had been so good that no one had thought to look behind it. I should have stopped there, but something in me wanted to understand faster than she was ready to be understood. I said, "Is this about a person?" Priya's face closed, like a window shutting. The openness pulled back behind something smooth and polite. She said, "It's about a lot of things." She stood up, rinsed her mug, and went to her room. I sat at the kitchen table and knew I had broken it. I had pushed for the specific when she was still working on the general. That night, I watched the camera live. Priya came in at 2:12, sat cross-legged, 11 minutes, hands flat on the floor, no words. I was lying in my bed 6 feet from where she was sitting, and I could hear her breathing if I held still enough. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't turn on the light. I lay there and let her have the floor. After the conversation I had ruined by pushing, the only correct thing was to not push at all, to be the room she came to and not the person who turned on the lights. In the morning, the coffee was on the counter. Under the mug was a small piece of paper folded once. It said, "It is about a person. I'm not ready to talk about him yet, but thank you for not pretending you didn't notice." I picked up the pen by the junk drawer and wrote underneath her words, "Whenever you're ready, I'm still here." I used her words on purpose, the words she had said on my floor at 2 in the morning. I wanted her to have them back. When I came home that evening, Priya was in the kitchen. She said, "I made enough for 2. We ate at the kitchen table. We talked about nothing important. It was the most important meal we had shared in 6 months. Not because of what was said, but because of what was underneath it." Over the next several days, Priya started to open up, not in long conversations, in pieces. We were washing dishes and she said, "His name was Blay." She handed me the plate. I dried it. I didn't ask a follow-up. The next day, folding laundry, she said, "We were together for 3 years. Same tone, same casual delivery, like dropping something off at a counter and walking away before I could hand it back." A couple days later, she was watering the plant on my windowsill, and she stopped and said, "He wasn't violent. He was just everywhere, in every decision, in every room, until I couldn't find the walls of my own life anymore." She said it looking at the plant, not at me. I stood in the doorway and held it. I had learned from the kitchen table what happens when you reach for the center before someone is ready. I learned to hold the pieces she gave me without trying to assemble them into something she hadn't built yet. The sleepwalking was changing. I was still checking the camera every night. Priya still came in, but the time was getting shorter. 9 minutes, then 8, then 7. Each fragment she let go of in the light took a minute off the time she needed in the dark. Then a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, I'm a friend of Priya's from back home. I haven't been able to reach her and I'm getting worried. Is she okay? She's been through a lot and I just want to make sure she's safe." Every word was positioned to make the sender sound kind and the person they were asking about sound fragile. I didn't respond. I took a screenshot. That night, I showed Priya the text. Her face went completely still. She put her water glass down. She said, "That's him. That's how he does it. He finds the people around me and he makes himself sound like the worried one." Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat on the counter the same way she pressed them flat on my floor. She said, "He did this with my coworkers. He did this with my sister. He finds whoever I'm close to and talks to them first, so that when I say something about him, they already have his version. By the time I tell anyone what actually happened, they've already heard the version where he's worried and caring and I'm the one who ran away for no reason. I understand understood then. The cheerfulness, the managed smile, the performance of being fine. It wasn't just about disappearing, it was defense. If Priya seemed perfectly okay, there was nothing for Blaze to use. The version that made coffee and smiled in hallways wasn't just a performance of wellness, it was a wall. I said, I didn't respond, and I won't. Priya said, most people respond. Most people think he sounds nice. I said, he doesn't sound nice. He sounds like someone who's practiced at sounding nice. There's a difference. She exhaled, not a sigh, more like something heavy shifting position for the first time in a long time. A few days later, the landlord stopped me in the hallway. Some guy came by asking about our apartment, said he was Priya's brother, wanted to know if she still lived here. The landlord didn't give out information. Priya doesn't have a brother. I told her. The color left her face in stages. She said, he's never come to where I live before. She sat on the couch and pulled her knees up and said, I moved 400 miles. I changed my number. I thought distance was enough. That night, the camera showed 22 minutes, the longest she had ever been there. The minutes had been getting shorter. 9, 8, 7, and now 22. The building visit had put something back that the talking had been slowly taking away. At minute 19, she spoke. She said, this is mine. A woman sitting on a floor in the dark at 2 in the morning saying this is mine. Not a house, not a room. A piece of floor she had been claiming every night because someone had spent years making her feel like she didn't get to have ground. The next morning I called Devin, a friend from college who works as a legal aid. I described the situation without using Priya's name. An ex who contacts the people around her, who shows up at places she lives, who never does anything that looks like a threat on its own. Devin said, document everything. The pattern is the evidence. No single incident will be enough, but the pattern will. He said she had to be the one to decide to move forward with it. I opened a document and started building a timeline. The texts, the landlord visit, the dates, the fragments Priya had told me. I didn't show her yet, but I could make sure that when she was ready, she wouldn't have to start from nothing. Blaze texted again. I can tell you're ignoring me. She probably told you things about me. I just want you to know that there are two sides to every story, and I hope you'll hear mine before you decide who I am. Every word doing work, every sentence built to make my silence feel like the unfair thing. I screenshotted it, added it to the document. That evening I showed Priya the document. I said, I made this for you, not to pressure you. If you ever decide you want to do something, you shouldn't have to start from zero. She scrolled through it slowly. She got to the second text from Blaze and read it twice. She said, he used to talk to me like that, like he was the calm one, like I was the one being unreasonable for having boundaries. Then she stopped. She said, you documented the sleepwalking? I told her about the camera. I told her what I saw. I told her what she said. She said, what did I say? I said, the first time you said I'm still here, the last time you said this is mine. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I didn't know I was saying those things, but I know where they're coming from. She said with Blaze, she had stopped being able to say what she meant out loud. He had made the cost of honesty so high that her real thoughts went somewhere else. She said, I think my body was practicing, saying the things in your room at night that I couldn't say anywhere during the day. She said, your room felt safe. I don't know how I knew that while I was asleep, but I knew it. I said, I should have told you about the camera sooner. She said, maybe. But if you had told me right away, I would have been so embarrassed I would have locked my door, and you would have never seen what was happening, and I would still be performing fine every morning. She said, you watched me, and you didn't turn on the lights. You waited until I was ready to turn them on myself. That matters. Then she picked up her phone. She said, I'm going to call Devin. I want to start the process. She said, not because I think it'll stop him forever, but because I want to be the person who does something instead of the person who moves to a new city and hopes distance is enough. She called. Her voice on the phone was clear and steady. She described the pattern in her own words, not my document, her version, her language. I sat next to her and listened to her own it. After she hung up, she said, I'm going to try sleeping with my door open tonight, on purpose. Not because I'm walking in my sleep, but because I don't want to need to be asleep to feel safe in this apartment. I said, okay. She smiled. The real one, the uneven one. She said, and if I end up on your floor anyway, at least this time I'll know why. That night I didn't check the camera. I left my door open too. I slept better than I had in weeks. In the morning there was coffee on the counter and Priya was sitting at the table and I sat down across from her and she said, I didn't come in last night. First time in weeks. She was smiling, but it wasn't the managed smile. It was the uneven, imperfect one of someone who was not performing anything. The document was on the table between us. The process was just starting. Blaze hadn't gone away, but the floor Priya had been sitting on in the dark was now a kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee and daylight coming in through the window and someone across from her who chose to pay attention. The most important thing anyone can do for another person is exactly that simple and exactly that hard. Just listen to the whole answer. Just stay in the room.